The deafening crack of a gunshot echoed through the otherwise silent dawn. As Olivia Lawson fled across the barren Texas landscape, her worn boots raising clouds of dust with each desperate step. The year was 1875, and she hadn't uttered a word in nearly 5 years, not since the night that had stolen everything from her family, her home, and finally, her voice. The morning sun climbed higher as Olivia's pace slowed, her lungs burning for air. San Elizario lay somewhere ahead, a town she'd never seen but had been told might offer sanctuary. Her throat ached with thirst, a cruel reminder of the voice that no longer lived there. She paused atop a small rise, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. The men who'd burned her employer's ranch would be looking for witnesses, even silent ones. What she saw instead was a lone rider approaching from the west. Olivia ducked behind a cluster of scrubby mesquite, her heart pounding against her ribs. The horseman drew closer, tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered, with a well-worn Stetson pulled low over his eyes. A rifle rested across his lap, but his posture seemed relaxed, unaware of her presence. As he passed within 30 yards of her hiding place, his horse suddenly faltered, one hoof catching in a prairie dog hole. The animal stumbled, nearly unseating its rider, who cursed colorfully as he fought to maintain control. In that moment, his gaze swept the landscape and locked directly with Olivia's wide, frightened eyes. She bolted like a startled deer, abandoning concealment for speed. "Hold up there," the stranger called, his voice carrying across the distance between them. "I mean you no harm, miss." Olivia kept running, her meager belongings clutched tightly to her chest. She'd learned the hard way that a woman alone couldn't trust the promises of strangers, especially men who carried guns with easy familiarity. The thunder of hooves behind her told her escape was impossible. The rider circled around, cutting off her path. Olivia skidded to a stop, breathing hard, her eyes darting for any possible route of escape. "Easy now," the man said, his voice gentler as he dismounted several yards away. "You look half dead from thirst. I've got water." He held out a canteen, then set it on the ground between them before backing away. Olivia remained frozen, studying him with wary eyes. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 or so, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the deep blue of a summer sky. His clothes were dusty, but decent, not the flashy garb of a gunslinger or the filthy attire of an outlaw. "My name's Samuel Matthews," he said, removing his hat to reveal dark hair streaked with sun-bleached strands. "I'm foreman at the Triple Crown Ranch outside San Elizario." "Were you headed all alone out here?" Olivia made no move to answer, her gaze fixed on the canteen. Her thirst finally overwhelmed her caution, and she darted forward to snatch it up before retreating to a safe distance. The water was warm but clean, and she drank gratefully, keeping her eyes on the stranger. "Not much for conversation, are you?" Samuel remarked with a half-smile that quickly faded when he saw the flash of pain cross her face. "You in some kind of trouble, miss?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded once, her eyes flicking nervously to the horizon behind her. "Someone after you." His hand moved instinctively to his gun belt. Another nod, more emphatic this time. Samuel's expression hardened. "Well, I can't leave a woman alone out here with trouble on her heels. San Elizario's about 5 miles ahead. I can take you there or to the Triple Crown if you'd prefer. Owner's wife is a kind woman. She'd see you safe." Olivia clutched her throat, then shook her head in frustration. From her pocket, she withdrew a small slate and a stub of chalk she carried for just such interactions. With shaking hands, she wrote a single word: "Mute." Samuel's expression shifted, not to pity as she'd expected, but to a quiet understanding that surprised her. "I see," he said simply. Well, that don't change nothing about you needing help. She hesitated, then wrote again. Santa Lazario. Fair enough. Can you ride? You can take my horse and I'll walk alongside. Olivia shook her head and pointed to herself, then mimicked walking. Samuel chuckled. Stubborn, I see. Well, I reckon we'll both walk then. Dusty here could use the rest after nearly tossing me. He patted the chestnut gelding's neck before taking the reins and gesturing for her to lead the way. As they set off toward town, Olivia felt the weight of his gaze but found it lacked the predatory quality she'd come to fear in men's eyes. Still, she maintained her distance, years of caution not easily set aside. Been quiet a long time. Samuel asked after they'd walked in silence for nearly a mile. Olivia held up 5 fingers. 5 years. That's a long spell. He didn't press for details, which she found oddly comforting. I don't talk much myself most days. Just me and the cattle and whatever cowhand needs directing. Words get used up pretty quick out here where the land does all the talking anyway. The poetic observation surprised her. This Samuel Matthews wasn't what she expected from a ranch foreman. There was a thoughtfulness to him that reminded her of her father, long dead now. Santa Lazario gradually appeared on the horizon, a cluster of adobe buildings glowing golden in the afternoon sun. Olivia's steps quickened despite her exhaustion. Somewhere in that town lay a chance to disappear, to start over where nobody knew her history. Town's been growing since the Army expanded Fort Bliss, Samuel commented. Still small enough everybody knows everybody's business, though. He glanced at her. You got people expecting you, she shook her head. A job, then. Another headshake. Samuel frowned. Santa Lazario ain't always kind to those without connections or purpose, miss, especially women alone. Olivia stopped walking and wrote on her slate, Seamstress, need work. That's so. Well, as it happens, Mrs. Perkins just lost her assistant, might be looking for skilled hands. I could put in a word if you'd allow it. She studied him, searching for hidden motives, finding none she could discern. After a moment's consideration, she nodded once. Good. We'll head there first, then. Old widow lady proper as they come, you'll be safe with her. The town grew larger with each step, and Olivia felt the familiar tension build in her shoulders. New places meant new people, new questions she couldn't answer, new dangers she couldn't predict. Yet Samuel's steady presence beside her provided an unexpected anchor. As they entered the outskirts of Santa Lazario, curious eyes turned their way. A woman traveling with a known cowboy raised eyebrows, particularly one dressed in dusty, travel-worn clothes. Olivia kept her gaze lowered, following Samuel's lead through the main street. Mrs. Perkins's shop sat on the corner of the town square, a neat establishment with a display of fine dresses and suits in the window. Samuel tied his horse to the hitching post and gestured for Olivia to wait as he knocked on the door. A thin, elderly woman with steel-gray hair appeared, her expression brightening at the sight of him. Samuel Matthews, what brings you to town on a Tuesday? Mrs. Perkins, good afternoon. I've brought someone you might want to meet. He stepped aside, revealing Olivia. This lady's a seamstress looking for work. I recalled you mentioning your assistant had moved away. Mrs. Perkins adjusted her spectacles, examining Olivia with shrewd eyes. You have experience, girl? Olivia nodded and wrote quickly on her slate. 10 years. Dresses, repairs, embroidery. The older woman's eyebrows rose. You cannot speak. Olivia shook her head. Not ideal for customer service, but if your needlework is as good as you claim. She glanced at Samuel. You're vouching for her character, Mr. Matthews. Samuel hesitated only briefly. I am, madam. She's in some trouble, though not of her making, I'd wager. Mrs. Perkins pursed her lips. Come inside, both of you. The street is no place for such discussions. The shop's interior smelled of fabric and beeswax, clean and orderly. Mrs. Perkins led them to a small sitting area behind the counter and gestured for them to be seated. "Now then, young woman. Your name?" Olivia wrote. "Olivia Lawson. Miss Lawson. I must know what kind of trouble follows you before I consider employing you. I cannot afford scandal in my establishment." Olivia's hands trembled as she wrote. "Witnessed murder. Men responsible looking for me." Mrs. Perkins inhaled sharply. "I see, and the law." Olivia's expression darkened as she added. "Sheriff was one of them." Samuel leaned forward, his face grim. "Where was this, Miss Lawson?" "Laredo," she wrote. "That's a fair distance," Mrs. Perkins mused. "Nearly 200 miles. How long have you been traveling?" "2 weeks. On foot mostly." Samuel muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. "Mrs. Perkins, I believe this young lady needs our help. If her skill with a needle is as claimed, would you consider a trial period?" The elderly woman studied Olivia thoughtfully. "I would need to see her work first, and accommodations must be arranged. She certainly cannot stay alone at the boarding house if dangerous men might come looking." "My sister's place has a spare room," Samuel offered. "Elizabeth would welcome the company, I'm sure. Her husband's away on cattle business most days." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise at his continued assistance. She wrote, "Why help me?" Samuel met her gaze steadily. "Because it's right, and because I've seen what happens when good people look away from others' suffering." Something in his tone suggested personal experience, and Olivia felt a flicker of connection to this solemn cowboy with kind eyes. Mrs. Perkins cleared her throat. "Very well. Miss Lawson, if you'll show me what you can do with needle and thread, we'll proceed from there." She stood and moved to a workbench where several garments lay waiting for attention. For the next hour, Olivia worked on mending a torn shirt collar and embellishing the cuff with a delicate pattern of her own design. Her fingers moved with practiced precision despite her exhaustion. When she finished, Mrs. Perkins examined the work with critical eyes. "Excellent," she pronounced finally. "Your stitches are even and strong, and your embroidery shows genuine artistry." She named a modest weekly wage. "Room and board would be your responsibility. I can advance you 2 weeks' pay to get settled." Olivia blinked back unexpected tears of relief and nodded her acceptance. "Samuel, would you escort Miss Lawson to your sister's home? I'll expect her here at 7 tomorrow morning." Outside, the afternoon sun had begun its descent toward the western horizon. Samuel untied his horse and again offered Olivia the chance to ride, which she again declined with a shake of her head. "My sister's place is on the far edge of town," he explained as they walked. "Elizabeth married Patrick Kelly 3 years back. He runs cattle with us at Triple Crown but keeps a small place of his own." Olivia nodded, attempting a small smile of thanks. "You don't need to worry about explaining everything to her right away," Samuel continued. "Lizzie doesn't pry. She'll just be happy for the company." The Kelly home proved to be a modest adobe structure with brightly painted shutters and a small garden where vegetables grew in neat rows. A young woman with Samuel's same blue eyes appeared at the door before they reached it, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. "Sam, what brings you by in the middle of the week?" Her gaze shifted to Olivia, curiosity evident. "Lizzie, this is Miss Olivia Lawson. She's starting work with Mrs. Perkins tomorrow and needs lodging. I told her you might have room." Elizabeth smiled warmly. "Of course we do. The back bedroom's just gathering dust." She extended her hand to Olivia. "Welcome, Miss Lawson. Any friend of my brother's is welcome here." Olivia took her hand gratefully, then wrote on her slate, "Thank you. Cannot speak. Will pay fair rent." Elizabeth's eyes widened slightly, but her smile never faltered. We'll discuss arrangements later. You look exhausted, poor thing. Come inside and rest while I finish supper." Samuel cleared his throat. "I should get back to the ranch. Boss will be wondering where I've gone off to." "Nonsense," his sister countered. "You'll stay for supper, Samuel Matthews. Patrick won't be home till late, and I've made plenty." Olivia watched their easy banter with a pang of longing for her own lost family. When Samuel finally agreed to stay, she found herself oddly relieved. His presence had become a strange comfort in this unfamiliar town. The Kelly home was simple but welcoming, with handmade quilts and curtains adding color to whitewashed walls. Elizabeth showed Olivia to a small, clean room with a narrow bed and a chest of drawers. "Rest a while," she suggested kindly. "I'll call you when supper's ready." Left alone, Olivia sank onto the bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. She hadn't expected kindness from strangers, not after years of hiding and running. Samuel Matthews's face floated in her mind's eye, his quiet strength and unexpected gentleness, a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Later, over a hearty meal of stew and freshly baked bread, Elizabeth chatted easily, requiring little response beyond nods or gestures from Olivia. Samuel remained relatively quiet, but his eyes often strayed to Olivia, watching her with something that seemed more like concern than curiosity. As the evening drew to a close, Samuel rose to leave. "I'll check in on you when I'm next in town," he told Olivia. "Probably Saturday. We usually bring cattle to market then," she wrote. "Thank you for everything today." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're welcome, Miss Lawson. I hope Santa Lazario brings you the peace you're seeking." After he departed, Elizabeth helped Olivia settle into her room, providing a nightgown and basic toiletries. "Sam doesn't usually take to strangers," she remarked thoughtfully. "He must see something special in you." Olivia shook her head, embarrassed. "Well, whatever brought you here, I'm glad you've come. It gets lonely with Patrick away so often." Elizabeth squeezed her hand gently. "Sleep well, Olivia. Tomorrow's the start of something new." As Olivia lay in bed that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of Santa Lazario, she wondered about Samuel Matthews and why he'd chosen to help her. His face, weathered by sun and wind but somehow still youthful in its earnestness, was the last image in her mind before exhaustion claimed her. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee brewing. Olivia dressed quickly in her cleanest remaining clothes, embarrassed by their worn state. Elizabeth, sensing her discomfort, offered a simple blouse of her own. "Until you can get settled," she insisted when Olivia tried to decline. "Mrs. Perkins pays fair wages. You'll have new things soon enough." At the shop, Mrs. Perkins proved to be a demanding but fair employer. She introduced Olivia to the regular customers as "my new assistant with exceptional needlework skills," smoothly explaining her muteness as the result of a childhood fever. The explanation prevented uncomfortable questions and allowed Olivia to work in relative peace, measuring clients and making alterations. The days fell into a steady rhythm. Olivia worked from dawn until dusk, her fingers constantly busy with needle and thread. At night, she returned to Elizabeth's home, where she slowly began to feel safe for the first time in years. Patrick Kelly, when he was home, proved to be a boisterous but kind man who treated his wife with obvious adoration and extended the same warmth to Olivia. True to his word, Samuel appeared at the shop on Saturday afternoon, dressed in cleaner clothes than their first meeting but still unmistakably a working cowboy. He nodded politely to Mrs. Perkins before approaching Olivia at her workbench. "Miss Lawson," he greeted her, hat in hand. "I trust you're settling in well." Olivia nodded, surprised by the flutter of pleasure his appearance brought. She wrote, "Very well, your sister is kind." "Lizzie's the best of us," he agreed with obvious affection. "I brought you something." From his pocket, he produced a small leather-bound book. "Noticed you writing on that slate all the time. Thought you might like something more permanent. For longer thoughts, maybe." Olivia accepted the journal with wide eyes, running her fingers over the smooth cover. Inside were blank pages of good quality paper, and tucked in the back was a pencil. "Slate's practical for quick words," Samuel continued, a hint of awkwardness in his usually confident demeanor. "But seems to me you might have more to say than fits on that little thing." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes as she held the thoughtful gift. No one had considered her need to communicate beyond immediate necessities in years. She opened the journal and wrote her first words. "Thank you, Samuel. This means more than I can express." He read her words and smiled, the warmth of it reaching his eyes. "You're welcome, Olivia. May I call you that?" She nodded and added, "And I'll call you Sam." "I'd like that." He glanced around the shop, then lowered his voice. "I was wondering if you might join me for supper at the hotel restaurant tonight. As my guest, of course." Olivia hesitated, surprised by the invitation. It wasn't exactly a courting request. Those usually involved walks after church or chaperoned socials, but it felt personal nonetheless. After a moment she wrote, "I would enjoy that." "Good," Sam replied, his relief evident. "I'll come by Elizabeth's at 6 if that suits you." Mrs. Perkins, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, approached with a knowing smile. "Miss Lawson, you may leave early today to prepare. A young lady should look her best for dinner out." Olivia flushed, but nodded gratefully. At Elizabeth's house, the news of the dinner invitation sparked immediate excitement. "Sam never takes anyone to dinner," she exclaimed, pulling dresses from her wardrobe for Olivia to try. "Not since that awful business with Charlotte Porter 2 years ago." Olivia raised an eyebrow questioningly. Elizabeth hesitated. "It's not really my story to tell, but Charlotte was the banker's daughter. Everyone thought they'd marry until she eloped with a gambler passing through town. Sam took it hard, doesn't trust easily now." The information added new layers to Olivia's understanding of the solemn cowboy. She wondered what had prompted him to reach out to her, of all people a mute stranger with a mysterious past. Elizabeth eventually settled on a blue dress that brought out the golden highlights in Olivia's brown hair. "Perfect," she declared, helping Olivia pin up her long tresses in a simple but elegant style. "Sam won't know what hit him." When Sam arrived, right at 6 o'clock, he stood momentarily speechless at the sight of Olivia in the borrowed finery. "You look beautiful," he finally managed, a flush creeping up his neck. The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in San Elizario, with white tablecloths and actual glass windows looking out onto the town square. Heads turned as Sam escorted Olivia to a corner table, curiosity evident in the gazes that followed them. "Folks aren't used to seeing me in such civilized company," Sam explained with a self-deprecating smile. "Lizzie's always saying I need to come to town more often than cattle days." Olivia opened her new journal and wrote, "Why did you invite me tonight?" Sam considered her question carefully before answering. "Honestly, because I can't stop thinking about you, not just your situation, though that concerns me, but there's a strength in you I admire." His candor surprised her. She wrote, "You don't know me." "I'd like to," he replied simply. "If you're willing." Their meal arrived beefsteaks with potatoes and early summer vegetables momentarily pausing their conversation. Olivia found herself studying Sam as he ate, noting the careful manners that belied his rugged appearance. This was no uncouth cowhand, but a man raised with propriety despite his frontier occupation. When they'd finished eating, Olivia wrote, "Tell me about yourself, Sam Matthews." He smiled slightly. "Not much to tell. Born in Missouri, came west with my parents when I was 10. Father tried farming but took sick and died when I was 16. Mother passed 2 years later. Been working cattle ever since." He paused, then added, "Started as a regular cowhand, worked my way up to foreman at Triple Crown 5 years ago." Olivia nodded encouragingly. "I like the work," he continued. "Being outdoors, the rhythm of the seasons, the responsibility suits me, though the loneliness sometimes doesn't." He met her eyes. "Your turn, Olivia Lawson, whatever you're willing to share." She hesitated, then wrote, "Virginia originally, father was a doctor. Mother taught school, both killed in fire when I was 18, brother too." Her hand trembled slightly as she added, "I wasn't home, came back to ashes." Sam's expression softened with compassion. "I'm sorry, Olivia," she continued writing. "Went to live with aunt in Laredo, she died last year. I worked as seamstress for rancher's wife outside town, until—" Her pencil hovered over the page as memories threatened to overwhelm her. "Until whatever happened that took your voice," Sam finished quietly. "You don't have to tell me now or ever if it's too painful." Olivia swallowed hard and wrote, "One day I will, when I know you better." "I'd like that chance," he replied, his voice low and sincere, "to be someone you might trust with your story someday." Their walk back to Elizabeth's house was quiet but comfortable. At the door, Sam took Olivia's hand gently. "Thank you for joining me tonight. May I call on you again?" She nodded, a smile touching her lips for the first time in what felt like forever. "Sunday after church," he suggested. "We could walk by the river if you'd like." Another nod, more enthusiastic this time. "Good night then, Olivia." He squeezed her hand once before releasing it and stepping back. "Sleep well." Elizabeth was waiting inside, bursting with curiosity but trying to appear nonchalant. "How was dinner?" Olivia opened her journal and wrote, "Wonderful. He's invited me walking on Sunday." Elizabeth clapped her hands in delight. "I knew it. Oh, Olivia, I haven't seen Sam look at anyone the way he looks at you since, well, in a very long time." That night, alone in her room, Olivia wrote pages in her new journal, releasing thoughts and feelings long bottled inside. She wrote about her fears and her tentative hope, about the strange connection she felt to a cowboy she barely knew. Most of all, she wrote about the unexpected kindness she'd found in San Elizario after years of hardship and solitude. Sunday dawned clear and warm. Olivia accompanied the Kellys to the small wooden church on the edge of town, where curious glances and whispers followed her down the aisle. She sat stiffly, uncomfortable with the attention, until Sam slipped into the pew beside her, his solid presence a buffer against the stairs. The sermon spoke of redemption and new beginnings, words that resonated deeply with Olivia. When the congregation stood to sing, a familiar ache filled her throat, the phantom memory of a voice once raised in song, now silenced. Sam noticed her distress and surprised her by not singing himself, instead standing quietly beside her in solidarity. The simple act of understanding brought tears to her eyes. After the service, they walked along the Rio Grande, the brown waters flowing lazily beneath the summer sun. Sam told stories of cattle drives and frontier adventures, his deep voice painting vivid pictures that made Olivia smile and occasionally laugh silently, her shoulders shaking with mirth. When they reached a shady spot beneath cottonwood trees, they sat on a fallen log, watching the river's steady progress. "Can I ask you something, Olivia?" Sam ventured after a comfortable silence. She nodded, opening her journal. "Have you seen doctors about your voice?" The question wasn't entirely unexpected, but it still sent a pang through her chest. She wrote, "3, all said the same, not physical damage, something in my mind, might heal with time, might not." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "Does it hurt to try to speak?" not physically, but yes. He seemed to understand the deeper meaning behind her simple words. Some wounds can't be seen, he said quietly, doesn't make them any less real. Olivia studied his face, sensing he spoke from experience. She wrote, "You have invisible wounds too." A sad smile touched his lips. "Reckon most folks do out here. Life on the frontier isn't gentle." She hesitated, then added, "Elizabeth mentioned Charlotte." Sam's expression tightened momentarily. "Ah, well, that's ancient history now." He picked up a stone and skipped it across the water's surface. "Thought I knew her. Thought we had an understanding. Turned out I was wrong on both counts." Olivia wrote, "I'm sorry. Don't be. Taught me a valuable lesson about trusting my instincts about people." He looked at her directly. "Which is why I trust you, Olivia Lawson, even without knowing all your secrets." The weeks that followed fell into a pleasant pattern. Olivia worked diligently at Mrs. Perkins's shop during the week, earning enough to pay Elizabeth fair rent and begin saving for her own place. Sam called on her each Sunday after church, and occasionally midweek when ranch business brought him to town. Their courtship, for that's what it had become, though neither had named it so, progressed slowly, built on growing trust and unspoken understanding. Sam never pressed Olivia to communicate beyond what felt comfortable, seemingly content with her written words and expressive gestures. By midsummer, Olivia had become a familiar sight in San Elizario. Townsfolk who had initially regarded her with suspicion now greeted her warmly, impressed by her skilled needlework and gentle demeanor. Mrs. Perkins proudly displayed Olivia's embroidered pieces in the shop window, attracting customers from as far as El Paso. One sweltering July afternoon, as Olivia sat working on an elaborate wedding dress, the shop bell jangled. She looked up to see three dusty men enter, their expressions hard beneath the brims of trail-worn hats. Her needle froze mid-stitch as recognition hit her like a physical blow. The tallest man, with a sheriff's badge pinned to his vest, surveyed the shop with cold eyes. "Afternoon, madam," he addressed Mrs. Perkins. "We're looking for a woman. Young, brown hair, doesn't speak. Name might be Olivia Lawson." Mrs. Perkins's gaze flicked briefly to Olivia before she answered with remarkable composure. "May I ask why you're seeking this person, witness to a crime back in Lerdo, left before giving testimony?" The man's hand rested casually on his holstered pistol. "Just need to ask her some questions." Olivia sat frozen, blood roaring in her ears as memories flooded back the rancher's terrified face as these same men dragged him from his home. The sickening sound of gunshots, her desperate flight through the chaparral, pursued by killers wearing badges. Mrs. Perkins straightened to her full height, though she barely reached the man's shoulder. "I'm afraid I can't help you, gentlemen. No one of that description here. Now, unless you're in need of tailoring services, I must ask you to leave. You're disturbing my customers." The sheriff's eyes narrowed dangerously. "We'll be in town a few days, asking around. If you happen to remember anything helpful, we're staying at the hotel." His gaze swept the shop once more before the men departed, the bell jangling in their wake. The moment they were gone, Mrs. Perkins hurried to lock the door and flipped the sign to closed. "Miss Lawson," she said urgently, "go out the back way immediately. Those men mean you harm. I've lived long enough to recognize killers when I see them." She grabbed paper and quickly scrawled a note. "Take this to Samuel at the Triple Crown. Don't stop for anyone or anything." Olivia clutched the note with trembling hands, her face ashen. "Go now," Mrs. Perkins insisted. "I'll send word to Elizabeth not to expect you home. Hurry, child." Heart pounding, Olivia slipped out the rear door and into the alley behind the shop. She kept to back streets and gardens, avoiding the main thoroughfare where the men might spot her. The Triple Crown Ranch lay 5 miles outside town, a daunting distance in the summer heat, but fear lent speed to her steps. The sun was low on the horizon when Olivia finally stumbled onto ranch property, her dress soaked with sweat, dust coating her skin and hair. A young cowhand spotted her from the corral and called out in alarm. "Miss, you lost." She shook her head frantically, gesturing toward the main house, trying to convey the urgency of her situation. "You need the boss, or Mr. Matthews." At Sam's name, she nodded vigorously. "He's out with the herd in the north pasture. Should be back soon for supper." The cowhand eyed her with concern. "You look about ready to drop, miss. Come sit in the shade at least." Olivia followed him to the bunkhouse porch, where he offered a dipper of water from a nearby barrel. She drank gratefully, then sank onto a bench, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her now that she'd reached relative safety. The sound of approaching horses roused her some time later. Sam dismounted before his horse had fully stopped, crossing to her in long strides, his face etched with worry. "Olivia, what on earth?" He broke off as she pressed Mrs. Perkins's note into his hand with shaking fingers. His expression darkened as he read, jaw tightening with anger. "Johnson," he called to the ranch owner who had dismounted behind him, "we've got trouble. Men from Laredo looking for Miss Lawson. Bad sorts, according to Mrs. Perkins." The older man frowned. "The lady in trouble, Matthews?" "Yes, sir. These men mean her harm. They're the ones she's been hiding from." Mr. Johnson nodded gravely. "Then she'll stay here tonight. The wife will see to her needs." He turned kind eyes to Olivia. "Don't you worry, miss. No strangers get onto Triple Crown property without us knowing about it." Sam helped Olivia to her feet, his arm steady around her waist. "Let's get you inside, Mrs. Johnson will have supper ready, and you look half-starved." The ranch house was spacious and comfortable, with polished wood floors and sturdy frontier furniture. Mrs. Johnson, a plump, motherly woman, took one look at Olivia and immediately set about arranging a bath and clean clothes. "Poor lamb," she clucked sympathetically, leading Olivia to a guest room. "You rest now. Food can wait till you're refreshed." The hot bath revived Olivia's spirits somewhat, though fear still lurked beneath her temporary sense of security. Dressed in a borrowed nightgown and wrapper, she found Sam waiting in the parlor, his expression grave. "Mrs. Perkins sent more details with one of her delivery boys," he explained, guiding Olivia to a chair by the fireplace. "The men asked all over town about you. Elizabeth told them you'd left weeks ago, headed for Arizona. Don't know if they believed her." Olivia's hands twisted anxiously in her lap. She glanced around for something to write on. Anticipating her need, Sam handed her the journal she'd left at Elizabeth's house. "Lizzie sent this along with some of your things. Said you might need it." With shaking hands, Olivia wrote, "They killed my employer and his wife. The sheriff led them. They were stealing cattle selling to rustlers. Rancher found out. I saw everything from the window. They searched but didn't find me. I ran that night." Sam read her words, his face hardening with anger. "These men are the law in Laredo," she nodded grimly. "That complicates things. Their badge gives them authority to keep searching." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "But I won't let them take you, Olivia. I promise you that." His vehemence surprised her. She wrote, "Why risk yourself for me? You barely know me." Sam met her gaze steadily. "I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and stronger than most men I've worked with, and I know that He paused, seemingly struggling for words. "I care for you, Olivia, more than I thought possible after such a short time." Warmth bloomed in Olivia's chest despite her fear. She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently in lieu of the words she couldn't speak. Mrs. Johnson's appearance with a tray of food interrupted the moment. "You need to eat," Miss Lawson, then straight to bed. Tomorrow's soon enough to figure things out. Despite the woman's motherly insistence, sleep proved elusive that night. Olivia lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to night sounds and imagining footsteps where there were none. Dawn found her exhausted but determined to face whatever came next. At breakfast, Mr. Johnson outlined his plan. "Matthews will take you to my sister's place in Fort Davis. It's 3 days' hard ride, but you'll be safe there while we sort this business out. I've sent word to the federal marshal in El Paso," Sam added. "If these men are abusing their authority, the federal court can intervene, but it will take time to investigate." Olivia nodded her understanding, grateful for their help yet hating to bring danger to those who had shown her kindness. "You'll leave at nightfall," Mr. Johnson continued. "Less chance of being spotted that way. Matthews knows the back trails better than any man in the territory." The day passed with agonizing slowness. Olivia helped Mrs. Johnson with household chores to keep her mind occupied, but anxiety remained her constant companion. By late afternoon, Sam had prepared 2 horses and packed provisions for the journey. "We'll ride through the night," he explained as he checked the saddle on a gentle mare selected for Olivia. "Rest during the hottest part of tomorrow, then push on. With luck, we'll reach Fort Davis by Thursday evening." As darkness fell, Olivia changed into men's clothing provided by Mrs. Johnson, practical for riding but also a disguise of sorts. Sam helped her mount, his hands strong and reassuring at her waist. "Stay close," he instructed softly. "The trail gets tricky in places, even with moonlight." They rode in silence through the gathering darkness, the rhythmic clop of hooves and the occasional cry of a night bird the only sounds. Olivia's body ached from the unaccustomed exercise, but fear of pursuit kept her alert despite her exhaustion. Dawn found them in rugged country, the Davis Mountains rising in the distance. Sam led them to a sheltered canyon where a small spring provided fresh water. "We'll rest here till afternoon," he decided, helping Olivia dismount. Her legs nearly buckled as they hit the ground, muscles protesting the long hours in the saddle. Sam caught her before she could fall, his arms strong around her waist. For a moment, they stood close, her face tilted up to his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You should sleep," he said finally, releasing her reluctantly. "I'll keep watch." Olivia nodded, too exhausted to protest. She curled up on a blanket beneath a scrubby juniper, sleep claiming her almost instantly. She woke to Sam's hand on her shoulder, his voice urgent in her ear. "Riders coming. Could be nothing, but we can't take chances." Fully alert now, Olivia scrambled to her feet, helping Sam erase signs of their camp with practiced efficiency. They were mounted and moving up the canyon within minutes, Sam leading them along a barely visible game trail that climbed steadily into rougher terrain. The distant sound of men's voices echoed off the canyon walls, confirming their fears. The Lerdo men had somehow picked up their trail. "They must have followed us from the ranch," Sam muttered grimly. "Johnson will be furious. He prides himself on security." The trail grew steeper, the horses picking their way carefully over loose shale. Olivia clung to her saddle, heart pounding with fear that had become all too familiar these past years. At the top of a ridge, Sam halted briefly, scanning the valley below. "There," he pointed to a plume of dust in the distance. "4 riders moving fast. They've got our direction, but not our exact position yet." They pushed on through the afternoon, taking advantage of the rocky terrain to obscure their trail. Sam's knowledge of the land proved invaluable, leading them through hidden canyons and dry creek beds where tracking would be nearly impossible. As dusk approached, they reached a small plateau overlooking a steep drop. We'll make a stand here if necessary, Sam decided, helping Olivia dismount. There's only one approach, and I can see them coming from a good distance. He unsaddled the horses and set them loose in a grassy area, knowing they wouldn't stray far from water. Then he unpacked his rifle and checked it methodically. I'm not looking for a fight, he explained, catching Olivia's worried glance. But I won't be caught unprepared either. They shared a cold meal of jerky and hardtack as darkness fell, neither having the heart for conversation. Sam insisted Olivia try to rest while he took first watch. I'll wake you in a few hours, he promised. We both need sleep if we're going to stay ahead of them tomorrow. Despite her exhaustion, Olivia found sleep impossible. She lay wrapped in her blanket, watching Sam's silhouette against the starlit sky, wondering how her quiet life as a seamstress had brought her to this dangerous moment. Eventually, she rose and moved to sit beside him at the edge of the plateau. He glanced at her, a half-smile visible in the moonlight. Can't sleep, she shook her head, then gestured for her journal which he'd packed with their provisions. In the dim light she wrote, "Thank you for risking everything for me." Sam read her words and shook his head slightly. Not everything, Olivia, just doing what's right. She hesitated, then wrote, "It's more than that between us, isn't it?" His eyes met hers, serious and steady. "Yes," he answered simply. "Much more." Before he could continue, a distant sound caught his attention, the faint clatter of horse hooves on stone. Sam tensed, reaching for his rifle. "They're tracking by moonlight," he whispered. "Determined bastards." Olivia clutched his arm, fear evident in her wide eyes. "It's all right," he assured her. "They can't approach without us seeing them, and they don't know exactly where we are." He guided her back from the edge into the shadow of a large boulder. "Stay here. Don't move unless I tell you to." The minutes crawled by as they listened to the sounds of pursuit, growing gradually closer. Sam positioned himself behind an outcropping of rock, rifle ready, but not yet aimed. The first rider appeared at the base of the trail leading up to their position, his face eerily illuminated by moonlight, the false sheriff from Laredo. He gestured to his companions, pointing up toward the plateau. "Someone's up there," his voice carried clearly in the night air. "Could be our quarry. Or just some rancher camped for the night," another man cautioned. "We don't need more trouble. We check," the sheriff decided. "Too much coincidence otherwise." Sam cursed under his breath. "They're coming up. When I engage them, you run for the horses." Head west along the ridge. There's another trail down about half a mile along. It's steep but passable. Olivia shook her head frantically, unwilling to leave him alone against 4 armed men. "Olivia, please," he urged. "I can't fight them and protect you at the same time. I need to know you're safe." The anguish in his eyes nearly broke her resolve, but before she could respond, a voice called up from the trail. "Hello, the camp. Anyone up there?" Sam motioned for Olivia to remain hidden, then called back. "Just a cowhand resting for the night. Who's asking?" "Sheriff Dawson from Laredo, looking for fugitives. Mind if we come up and talk?" "Rather you didn't," Sam replied evenly. "I'm turning in soon. Nothing to see here anyway." A moment of silence, then. "We're coming up regardless, friend. Official business." The sound of horses moving up the trail spurred Sam into action. "Last chance, Olivia. Go now while you can." Instead, she grabbed his spare pistol from his saddlebag, her expression resolute in the moonlight. She might not be able to speak, but she could still fight. Sam's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with understanding. "Together, then," he murmured. "But stay behind me." The first rider crested the plateau, followed closely by the others. In the silver light, their faces looked ghostly, expressions hard as they surveyed the small camp. "Evening, Sheriff," Sam greeted them, rifle held casually but ready. "As you can see, I'm alone up here, no fugitives." Sheriff Dawson dismounted slowly, his eyes narrowing as he studied Sam. "You're from San Elizario. Seen you there before." His gaze shifted to the two saddles near the boulder. "Traveling with a companion, Cowboy. My horse threw a shoe. Had to turn him loose," Sam lied smoothly. "Borrowed a mount from a friend to get home." "That's so." Dawson stepped closer, hand resting on his holstered gun. "Strange coincidence, us running into you out here. Almost like you're helping someone we're looking for." The tension stretched between them, fragile as spider silk. Sam's finger hovered near his rifle's trigger, his stance deceptively relaxed. "Don't know what you're talking about, Sheriff. I'm just a cowhand heading home after delivering cattle." One of the other men had been circling the perimeter of the small camp. "Boss," he called suddenly. "Footprints over here, small ones. Could be a woman." Dawson's expression hardened. "Where is she, Cowboy, the Lawson woman? We know she was in San Elizario. We know you've been seeing her." "Whoever you're looking for, she's not here," Sam replied, his voice dangerously quiet. "Search the area," Dawson ordered his men. "She can't have gone far." As one of the deputies approached the boulder where Olivia hid, Sam raised his rifle. "That's far enough." Dawson's gun appeared in his hand with practiced speed. "Drop it, Cowboy. You're interfering with lawful pursuit." "There's nothing lawful about you, Dawson," Sam countered. "I know what you did in Lerdo, murder and theft while wearing that badge." The sheriff's eyes flashed with genuine surprise before narrowing dangerously. "The woman's been filling your head with lies, Matthews. She's unstable, dangerous even. Funny, she can't speak at all, yet somehow I believe her silence more than your words." The moment stretched, taut with deadly potential. Then Dawson smiled coldly. "We'll find her with or without your help. And when we do, she'll meet the same end as her nosy employers back in Lerdo." The explicit threat snapped Sam's restraint. His rifle came up just as Dawson fired, the bullet whining past Sam's ear as he dove for cover. The plateau erupted in gunfire, muzzle flashes illuminating the darkness in staccato bursts. Olivia pressed herself against the boulder, the borrowed pistol clutched in white-knuckled hands. Through gaps in the rocks, she could see Sam exchanging fire with Dawson and his men, outnumbered but using the terrain to his advantage. One of the deputies cried out and fell as Sam's bullet found its mark. Another returned fire wildly before retreating to the cover of the trail. Dawson himself proved more difficult, his aim deliberate and dangerously accurate. A bullet splintered rock inches from Sam's head, forcing him to shift position. As he moved, Dawson's next shot caught him in the left shoulder, spinning him backward. Without conscious thought, Olivia emerged from hiding, pistol raised. Dawson turned at the movement, his expression changing to triumph when he saw her. "There you are," he snarled, swinging his gun toward her. "Should have stayed hidden, girl." Olivia fired twice in rapid succession, the recoil jarring her arms. The first shot went wide, but the second caught Dawson in the chest. He staggered, disbelief flooding his features before he crumpled to the ground. The remaining deputies, seeing their leader fall, retreated down the trail in chaotic flight. The sudden silence felt deafening in the aftermath of gunfire. Olivia rushed to Sam, who had pushed himself to a sitting position, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. "I'm all right," he assured her, grimacing with pain. "Just a flesh wound. You saved my life, Olivia." She knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face as she examined his injury with gentle fingers. The bullet had passed through cleanly, but blood soaked his shirt at an alarming rate. Working quickly, she tore strips from her spare shirt to bind the wound, her hands steady despite her fear. When she'd done all she could, she helped Sam to a more comfortable position against the boulder. "We should move soon," he murmured, his face pale in the moonlight. Those two might come back with reinforcements. Olivia shook her head firmly, gesturing to his shoulder and then to the horizon. They would rest until dawn, she insisted silently, when she could better tend his wound. Exhaustion eventually overcame Sam's protests, and he drifted into uneasy sleep, Olivia keeping vigilant watch beside him. She checked the surrounding area periodically, but the deputies had truly fled, apparently unwilling to risk their lives for their fallen leader. At first light, Olivia examined Sam's wound again, cleaning it as best she could with water from their canteen. The bleeding had slowed, but infection remained a serious concern. "Fort Davis is still a day's ride," Sam said weakly as she helped him to his feet. "Not sure I can make it that far." Olivia's jaw set with determination as she helped him mount, then swung up onto her own horse. They would make it, she resolved, even if she had to tie him to the saddle. The journey that followed tested the limits of both their endurance. Sam drifted in and out of consciousness as fever set in, staying upright only through sheer force of will. Olivia led them westward, following Sam's earlier directions as best she could remember. By midday, the Davis Mountains loomed closer, their rugged peaks promising sanctuary if they could only reach them. Sam's condition worsened with each passing hour, his skin burning with fever despite the water Olivia coaxed him to drink during their brief rests. Late afternoon brought their first glimpse of Fort Davis in the distance, its buildings nestled in a protected valley. Olivia's heart soared with relief, only to plummet again as Sam suddenly slumped forward in his saddle, unconscious. She caught him before he could fall, somehow managing to keep both him and herself mounted as they continued their desperate journey. By the time they reached the outskirts of town, Sam hung limply in her arms, his breathing shallow and rapid. Their arrival caused immediate commotion. Men rushed to help as Olivia frantically gestured to Sam's wound. Someone mentioned a doctor, and willing hands carried Sam to a nearby building while others led Olivia and the exhausted horses away. The next hours passed in a blur of anxiety. Unable to explain their situation, Olivia could only wait helplessly as the fort's doctor tended to Sam. Eventually, a kindly woman who introduced herself as Martha Collins, Mr. Johnson's sister, appeared and gently led Olivia to her home. "The doctor says Samuel will recover," she assured Olivia, providing her with paper to communicate. "The bullet wound was clean, but he's lost a lot of blood and the fever will take time to break." Olivia wrote frantically. "Men from Laredo, Sheriff Dawson dead, 2 escaped." Martha's eyes widened. "I see. I'll send word to my brother immediately. The Army commander here should be informed as well. You're safe now, Miss Lawson, both of you." The days that followed passed in anxious monotony. Olivia refused to leave Sam's bedside except when propriety absolutely demanded it, watching over his fevered sleep and changing his bandages with gentle hands. The doctor remarked that he'd never seen such dedicated nursing. On the third night, Sam's fever finally broke. He woke to find Olivia dozing in a chair beside his bed, her hand resting near his on the coverlet. For long moments, he simply watched her in the lamplight, memorizing the sweep of her lashes against her cheek and the soft curve of her lips. "Olivia," he whispered finally. Her eyes opened immediately, relief flooding her features as she saw him awake and lucid. She reached for her slate, then realized it wasn't there. Instead, she simply took his hand and pressed it to her cheek, her eyes conveying what words could not. "We made it," Sam murmured, his voice rough from disuse. "You got us here safely." She nodded, tears threatening to spill. "Dawson?" he questioned. Olivia drew a finger across her throat, dead. "The others?" She held up 2 fingers, then pointed away, escaped. "Johnson knows," a nod. Sam relaxed against the pillows, exhaustion still evident in his pale features. "You're safe now," he said softly. "That's what matters." Olivia shook her head firmly and pointed to him. His safety mattered equally to her. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both willing to die for the other after knowing each other such a short time." She smiled in response, her heart too full for even written words. Recovery came slowly. Sam's wound healed cleanly but left him weak and frustrated by his enforced inactivity. Olivia remained his constant companion, helping him walk when he was finally allowed out of bed, reading to him from books borrowed from Martha's small library, playing checkers to pass the long evenings. 2 weeks after their arrival in Fort Davis, a federal marshal appeared with news. The surviving deputies from Laredo had been captured attempting to cross into Mexico. Under questioning, they had implicated several officials in a widespread cattle rustling operation. The marshal assured Olivia that with their testimony, she no longer needed to fear persecution. "You can go home, Miss Lawson," he concluded kindly, "or start fresh anywhere you choose. Your testimony won't be needed now." That night, as she helped Sam to the porch for his evening constitutional, he broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. "What will you do now?" he asked quietly. "Will you go back to San Elizario?" Olivia had borrowed a small notebook from Martha. In it she wrote, "Where will you go when you're well? Back to Triple Crown, I expect. Mr. Johnson keeps my position open." She hesitated, then added, "I would like to return there too. If there's a place for me." Sam's hand covered hers on the page. "Olivia," he began, his voice unexpectedly serious, "these past weeks, being with you even while fighting for our lives and then recovering here, they've been the most meaningful of my life." She looked up at him, hope blossoming in her chest. "I know it's sudden," he continued. "I know we've known each other only a short time, but I've never been more certain of anything." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Olivia Lawson, voice or no voice, past or no past. I love your courage and your kindness and your quiet strength." Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she wrote shakily, "I love you too." "Then marry me," Sam said simply. "Be my wife. Let me listen to your heart for the rest of our lives." The words struck something deep within Olivia, a chord that resonated through her very being. She stared at him, overcome with emotion too profound for even written expression. Sam took her trembling hands in his. "I don't need to hear your voice to know your thoughts, Olivia. I've learned to read your eyes, your gestures, your expressions, and what I see there is everything I've ever wanted." Slowly, deliberately, Olivia raised one hand to her throat, feeling the muscles that had remained silent for so long. She drew a deep breath, willing sound to form where there had been none. "Yes," she whispered, the word emerging as barely more than a breath but audible nonetheless. "Yes, Sam." Sam's eyes widened in shock, then filled with joyful tears. "Olivia," he breathed, "your voice." She shook her head slightly. It wasn't fully returned, just a whisper of what had been. But in that moment, for him, she had found the courage to break through the wall of silence. "I'll listen to your heart instead," he promised, drawing her gently into his arms. "Always." Their wedding took place in San Elizario 3 months later, once Sam had fully recovered. The small church overflowed with well-wishers: the Johnsons, Elizabeth and Patrick, Mrs. Perkins, and many others who had become friends during Olivia's brief time in town. Olivia wore a dress of her own creation, elegant in its simplicity, with delicate embroidery adorning the bodice and sleeves. When asked if she would take Samuel Matthews as her husband, she spoke her "I do" in a soft but clear voice that brought tears to many eyes. Their life together began in a small house on Triple Crown property, close enough to the main ranch for Sam's work, but private enough for them to build their own world. Olivia established a dressmaking business that quickly gained renown throughout the county, her skilled hands creating beauty from simple cloth. Her voice returned gradually, never regaining its full strength, but allowing her to communicate in more than whispers. Some days, when memories pressed too close or nightmares disturbed her sleep, the silence would return, but Sam always understood, his patience and love a constant in her life. Their first child, a son they named James after Sam's father, arrived just over a year after their marriage. A daughter, Eleanor, followed 2 years later. Both children grew up knowing their mother's story, understanding that sometimes courage meant surviving, and sometimes it meant starting over. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Sam presented Olivia with a handcrafted jewelry box. Inside lay a simple silver locket engraved with their initials, but it was the note accompanying it that brought tears to her eyes. To Olivia, whose heart speaks louder than any voice ever could, "Your love has taught me to listen with more than my ears. Forever yours, Sam." Decades passed. San Elizario grew, railroad tracks finally reaching the once isolated community. The Matthews family prospered, Sam eventually becoming part owner of Triple Crown Ranch, Olivia's dressmaking evolving into a proper shop with apprentices of her own. Through it all, their love remained constant, a quiet, steadfast devotion born in danger but nurtured in peace. They weathered hardships together, drought years that threatened the ranch, illness that nearly claimed their daughter, the inevitable losses that come with a long life fully lived. On warm summer evenings, they would often sit together on their porch, watching grandchildren play in the yard as the Texas sun painted the sky in brilliant hues. Sometimes they would talk, sharing thoughts and memories accumulated through the years. Other times they sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, hearts speaking in a language that had never needed words. And if Olivia occasionally lost her voice to old ghosts, Sam would simply hold her close and whisper, "I'll listen to your heart instead." In those moments, she knew with absolute certainty that he heard every unspoken word.